No, actually, we're going to do Genesis.
Oh,
Yep.
oh,
All right, we're going to begin.
that is at the beginning of the,
And but before we look at scripture and all that kind of stuff, I'm wondering, present time included or excluded, I don't know, but I'm wondering, if there's a time in your life when a solution to a problem became just very clear. You know what I mean? It was just one of those aha, like, oh, I figured it out. And you felt a whole bunch better after that. You know.
yeah.
Well, what? Describe it.
Coming to Holy Cross.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I mean, I was desperately trying to find an Episcopal church.
Right. Yep.
And I didn't come here, like I told you, because of what the website said.
Right.
I just thought it was, an African American
Right.
congregation, basically. And I did not want to make them feel uncomfortable
Sure.
by having me come
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's.
finally-
Is it safe to say that's something you would prefer to be invited to?
yes.
Yes, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah, I
You know,
understand.
without I didn't want to force myself on someone.
Right.
And then I just said, I'm going there.
Yeah.
And, and if people feel really uncomfortable, I can feel that uncomfortable vibe, I'll leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But we all know what happens
No,
when you come to Holy
always
Cross.
have. Yeah. There you go. There you go.
You do not have that uncomfortable vibe. And so that was, the solution to my problem.
Yeah. That's cool.
I had my place to pray.
Yeah. How about you, Penny?
Mine is the most recent obvious, one that comes out of me is closing the business,
Yeah.
which I had agonized over for a couple of years. And it just, I'm not one that easily says, that it was a God thing. But it's like every step of the way, every time I had to make a decision, something would happen to lead me to the right decision.
Yeah.
And it's really been amazing.
Yeah.
It's been 6 months of moving along and getting to a point that I had to decide something and just kept on going.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Yeah. For you, it's attached to this place, walking in and all that. Is there a place where those realizations came to you, or anything like that?
No, not really.
Okay.
Not a specific place. I mean, yeah, certainly was something that I was praying about a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was really more external things that happened
Yeah.
that would make me realize that this was the next step I had to do.
Yeah. There you go.
Um,
Yeah, a lot of little things throughout the day.
I mean, the last one was the guy walks into the shop when I was in the tail end of the sale that just about done, and said, I met your husband about 5 years ago. I was having luncheon in a restaurant,
Huh?
and I was talking to a client about doing an auction,
Huh?
and your husband came up and interrupted me and said, I'm Dave Philo, and I'd like to have your card, because in about 5 years, I'm gonna need your name. And I remember David coming home and telling me that he'd met this auctioneer, that, that's gonna help us out.
Wow.
And that's like, and that was the last step. And
Wow.
I was terrific. I mean,
Very
he worked
good.
for me.
Wow. Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing. That's amazing.
That is a God thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, gosh, there's so many of them, but one of the things that I think about is, is how, we're here on campus, we're here in Pawleys Island, it's beautiful, and the people are beautiful and arrogant and shabby all at the same time, and all that stuff. And, but, we have an amazing ability to raise resources for the food pantry here. I mean, no doubt about that. Gosh, we've got surpluses out of the ears right now. But how do we get the resources to the people that need them? And they're in a different part of the county. And I, went and visited Caring and Sharing. And it was like, I see what you mean. This is what you know what I mean? Like, oh.
This is where we need.
Right. And then Carl says, I can't do this for about 3 years longer. And I didn't know what I was going to do till I met you, Father Will. You know what I mean? So, it's like, there it is. Boom, here we go. It's like, wow, that's how we do this. It's through partnership and all that. I think about the place that happened, and so caring and sharing is not only a food pantry and an access point for food for people, but it's also a spiritual place for me. You know what I mean? Like, let's say, years down the road, there's this, Father Will pilgrimage through the Low Country that stops at all the holy sites in his, I'm joking, but you know what I mean.
I know.
It would be one. It would be, here is where he heard God talk to him about the food pantry. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. Camp St. Christopher would be one. The and story. Remember the and? Mm-hmm. And, that's one, And so, we're going to look today at a place where God's presence is totally felt, and it's in Genesis. And I want to begin with my prayer book. This. Let us pray. Lord, grant us courage to stand firm by the tenets of your kingdom, to speak peace and to pursue it, to hunger and to thirst for righteousness, to uphold the cause of the voiceless, and to worship no other God before you. Amen.
Amen.
Michael, Shane Claiborne, good fellow. So let's see here. Let's start here. We're going to start different. There. Let's look at Jacob. What are we looking at Jacob today? So Isaac was Jacob's dad. Rebekah was Jacob's mother. The story is when he was born, Esau came out first, right? But Esau came out with Jacob hanging onto his foot, right?
Right.
So they gave him the name Jacob, which means it's like the one who creates coups. Like, you know what I mean? It's the replacement. It's the supplants. That's the word I was thinking of. So, and so we kind of know the story about him and Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob and didn't really like Esau, but Isaac liked Esau. So you got mama's boy and daddy's boy, right? I mean, it's a classic thing. And so Rebekah wanted Jacob to run the family business, run the clan, if you will, and to be the chief and all. And so they figured out a plot. I think we know the story, right? About him putting the sheep fur on his hands because Esau's hands were so hairy, and that kind of thing, and put the stuff on his head so he felt his hair, and that kind of thing. But anyway, Esau gets wind of this and gets pretty angry about it, and so sends the dogs after Jacob. So Jacob, flees and goes to his uncle Laban's house. But on the way, Jacob has a life-changing event in his life, and so he has this dream. And we're going to talk about the dream today. And he sets up an altar there. And a place that used to be called Luz is now called Bethel. And that was after Jacob put the little thing there. But Laban was pretty smart too. Jacob wanted to marry Rachel, but then Laban said, "You got to work for 7 years to marry Rachel." And then after 7 years, Laban said, "You can marry Leah." And so Jacob married Leah. And he said, "But for 7 more years of labor, you can marry Rachel too." And so that's what he did. What was really funny though is that Leah bore all the kids, and Rachel didn't have kids till way later in the story. So that's an interesting thing. I don't really understand, but he's very good for Laban's family. He definitely increased the size of the flocks, all of that kind of stuff. They did they did kind of have a lot of back and forth. They tried to outsmart each other and one up each other as guys do. But they did make a covenant in the end, and not when it got violent, they kind of called timeout. And so he tried to take care or try to send a lot of gifts ahead to Esau. He wanted to go and make peace with Esau, and so he divided his whole family up in case Esau clobbered one. At least the rest of it could continue, but he spent a night there in Peniel, and that's where he wrestles with the unknown angel, that puts his hip out of joint, and all of that kind of stuff, and then he gets that new name Israel, and then of course Esau is just happy to see him again, and all. And they moved down to Egypt, and then Jacob's son Joseph is the one that is the dream interpreter for Pharaoh, and also had the coat of many colors, if I remember correctly. So that's where all this fits in. You know what I mean? So it's quite an interesting story, and it's really fun, but. We have been watching Westerns at the Keith household. And so what I would like to do with y'all, Wanted. Pretend that you are Esau. And we're going to make a wanted poster for Jacob, right? So what's on a wanted poster? I can't remember, but I mean, so what usually it's kind of a name, like the crime. So what did Jacob do that wanted, Jacob, he didn't really have a last name back then, for what? Trickery. That's pretty good.
Stealing his heritage.
Trickery. I think we should say con man. Con man. Wanted con man Jacob for trickery. What else did he do, you think? I mean, this is the Wild West. There's not a court, you know what I mean? You're just going to put this on the wanted paper to encourage people to bring Jacob in to you,
Well, you've got to have
A reward? Yeah. Now, here's a question, though. Would Esau want Jacob dead or alive? It seems like at the end of the story, Esau's just glad to have him back, right?
Yeah.
So alive. That's kind of nice. We didn't do that yesterday. That's nice. Alive, not dead. So Jacob, Jacob wasn't this stand-up guy. He really, he was born second. Okay, I get it. But then he goes and Esau doesn't seem to be too bright. Okay, I get it, right? But man, Jacob really is sneaky. Do you want me to read the story of this whole trickery thing to you?
Yeah.
You get a real feel for it. Let me do that. Let me get to Genesis, though. What is it, 25? Is that where we are? 28. 28. Okay. When Isaac was so old that his eyesight had failed him, he called his older son Esau and said to him, "Son." "Yes, father," he replied. Isaac then said, "As you can see, I am so old that I may die at any time. Take your gear, therefore, your quiver and your bow, and go out into the country to hunt some game for me. And with your catch, prepare an appetizing dish for me, such as I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my special blessing before I die." Rebekah had been listening while Isaac was speaking to his son Esau. So when Esau went out into the country to hunt some game for his father, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Listen, I overheard your father tell your brother Esau, 'Bring me some game, and with it prepare an appetizing dish for me to eat, that I may give you my blessing with the Lord's approval before I die. Now, son, listen carefully to what I tell you. Go to the flock and get me 2 choice kids. And with these I will prepare an appetizing dish for your father, such as he likes. And then bring it to your father to eat, that he may bless you before he dies.' But my brother Esau is a hairy man," Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, "and I am smooth-skinned. Suppose my father feels me. He will think that I am making sport of him, and I shall bring on myself a curse instead of a blessing. His mother, however, replied, "Let any curse against you, son, fall on me. Just do as I say. Go and get me the kids." So Jacob went and got them and brought them to his mother, and with them she prepared an appetizing dish such as his father liked. Rebekah took the best clothes of her older son Esau that she had in the house and gave them to her younger son Jacob to wear. And with the skins of the kids, she covered up his hands and the hairless parts of his neck. And then she handed her son Jacob the appetizing dish and the bread she had prepared. Bringing them to his father, Jacob said, "Father." "Yes," replied Isaac. "Which of my sons are you?" Jacob answered his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I did as you told me. Please set up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your special blessing." But Isaac asked, "How did you succeed so quickly, son?" He answered, "The Lord your God let things turn out well with me." Isaac then said to Jacob, "Come closer, son, that I may feel you, to learn whether you really are my son Esau or not." So Jacob moved up closer to his father. And when Isaac felt him, he said, "Although the voice is Jacob's, the hands are Esau's." He failed to identify him because his hands were hairy, like those of his brother Esau. So in the end, he gave him his blessing. Again, he asked him, "Are you really my son Esau?" "Certainly," he replied. And then Isaac said, "Serve me your game, son, that I may eat of it and then give you my blessing." Jacob served it to him, and Isaac ate. He brought him wine, and he drank. Finally, his father Isaac said, "Come closer, son, and kiss me." Jacob went up and kissed him. Isaac smelled the fragrance of his clothes, and with that he blessed him, saying, "Ah, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give to you the dew of the heavens and of the fertility of the earth, an abundance of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations pay you homage. Be master of your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you." So what do you think? Shall I continue? You know it's coming.
Yeah.
Jacob had scarcely left his father just after Isaac had finished blessing him when his brother Esau came back from his hunt. Then he too prepared an appetizing dish with his game, bringing it to his father, and said, "Please, father, eat some of your son's game, that you may then give me your special blessing." "Who are you?" his father asked him. "I am Esau," he replied, "your firstborn son." With that, Isaac was seized with a fit of uncontrollable trembling. "Who was it then," he asked, "that hunted game and brought it to me? I finished eating it just before you came, and I blessed him. Now he must remain blessed." On hearing his father's words, Esau burst into loud, bitter sobbing. "Father, bless me too," he begged. When Isaac explained, "Your brother came here by a ruse and carried off your blessing," Esau exclaimed, "He has been well named Jacob. He has now supplanted me twice. First he took away my birthright, and now he's taken away my blessing." And then he pleaded, Haven't you saved a blessing for me?" And Isaac replied, "I've already appointed him your master, and I've assigned him all his kinsmen and slaves, and besides I've enriched him with grain and wine. What then can I do for you, son?" But Esau urged his father, "Have you only that one blessing? Father, bless me too." Isaac, however, made no reply, and Esau wept aloud. And finally Isaac again spoke to him and said, "Ah, far from the fertile earth shall be your dwelling, far from the dew of heavens above. By your sword you shall live, and your brother you shall serve. But when you become restive, you shall throw off his yoke from your neck." And Esau bore a grudge against Jacob because of that blessing his father had given.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah. And so then, so he gets really mad. And he says, "So once Isaac dies and we're done mourning with him, I'm going to kill Jacob." And so then Jacob bugs out, and goes to Laban. And that's where he goes and does his love life time, his 14 years of dating 2 women. So yeah, so there you go. So it's quite an interesting thing. This is the father, one of the fathers of the Jewish nation here, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does that make you feel? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, well, let's do the what and the where. On the back side of your thing, let's take a look at these things. I've just read a lot, so one of y'all are going to have, one of you do the what, one of you do the where.
What is important to know? God's promise to be with Jacob right here and right now. The promises of this covenant belong to the future, but Jacob has an urgent need to be protected and sustained in his present situation. And that is exactly what God promises him. Verse 15 enlists the 5 elements of the promise. I am with you, God's presence. I will keep you, God's protection. I will bring you back, God's ability to transform persons and situations. I will not leave you, God's constant help. I have promised it to you, God's unfailing word and promise.
Cool. Yep. There you go. So I'm wondering, do you know anybody else that God chose for special roles that were unexpected and, you know, and kind of surprising? Mary, yeah, lowly servant, right? Yeah,
I mean, you know,
it's a good one. Good one to start. Anybody else come to mind?
Moses.
Moses. What was wrong with Moses?
Well, he was a Pharaoh's son.
There you go. Yeah, he was kind of the enemy, wasn't he?
Except he wasn't. I mean,
Right.
you know.
Right. Exactly. Yep. 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 Well, I mean, you know, you got Peter. You know, my first boss, and he seemed to deny Christ just as much as I do every day. So there you go. That's not particularly good. David. I mean, we get almost 2 whole chapters of Bathsheba, and David was the best king ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I do find it interesting though that the leaders in the Hebrew Bible, leaders are treated fairly, and it's free press. It seems like, you know, you get both the good sides and the bad sides of these people, and they're still adored and they're still respected. You know, and so I find that kind of interesting. Penny, you want to read I'm sorry, Evie, you do the where? Yeah.
Where is God in these words? The God of promises does not wait around for people sufficiently squeaky clean to bless. No, the biblical God reaches down into the soul of the swindler to be with him and to keep him wherever he goes. It is through Jacob that the land will be given, to you and to your offspring. The church has seen the fulfillment of this and other promises in its own worldwide membership. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, a swindler, you know, is the father of many nations. How about that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Also know that this reading is paired in the lectionary with the wheat and the tares. The wheat and the weeds, right? Yeah, so this is definitely fodder for, I'm not using any of it because we're doing Sunday school with it, but it's definitely, you kind of see the thing, right? You know, God's like, yeah, there's some weeds in that guy, but there's some wheat too, so let's, you know.
Why dust? When I read that last night, I sort of, I mean, I'm not sure that in my house being told that somebody's going to be the dust of the earth is a good thing.
Right. Well, I think,
I mean, is it just widespread, or is it?
I think it is. I think it is. Hebrew is not my thing. If it was Greek, I could feel more confident, you know, and say that. But yeah, I just think it's just pervasive. It's like sand at the beach, you know what I mean? It gets everywhere, and so are Jacob's offsprings. They're everywhere. And so, but so here's the thing. So this has all been background. So let's look at the next little part of this, because the part of this story that's actually 28, 10 through 19. Okay, and I'll read this to you too. This is after all this. He goes to Laban, and has let's see here. And then Isaac sent Jacob on his way to Laban, and on the way to Laban, here's what happens. Okay, Jacob departed from Beersheba and proceeded toward Haran. And when he came upon a certain shrine, as the sun had already set, he stopped there for the night. And taking one of the stones at the shrine, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep at that spot. And then he had a dream. A stairway rested on the ground with its top reaching to the heavens. And God's messengers were going up and down on it. And there was the Lord standing beside him, saying, I, the Lord, am God of your forefather Abraham and the God of Isaac. The land on which you are lying I will give to you and your descendants. These shall be as plentiful as the dust of the earth, and through them you shall spread out east and west, north and south. And in you and your descendants all the nations of the earth shall find blessing. Know that I am with you. I will protect you wherever I go. I will bring you back to this land. I will never leave you until I have done what I promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he exclaimed, truly the Lord is in this spot, although I did not know it. In solemn wonder he cried out, how awesome is this shrine! This is nothing else but an abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone that he had under his head, set it up as a memorial stone, and poured oil on top of it. And he called that site Bethel. It used to be called Luz. They changed it to Bethel. So, a lot of the... so this is what we call a theophany. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's where you encounter God. You know, God, I mean, there's no denying that. I think in Celtic spirituality, they'd call that a thin place. I don't know if you've ever heard that. A thin place, you know, where that barrier that separates us from God. Now, I think the thing that probably gets the most attention out of this story is the ladder,
Yeah.
right? You know. And I hate to break it to you. I always feel like I just take all the mystery out of this stuff when I do Sunday school. But in reality, that ladder was probably probably one of these, a ziggurat.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They would build these, you know, as a place of worship. I do know that in Hebrew, the word shrine in this is pretty much synonymous with the word place. So that's it. I find that kind of interesting that shrine and place are interchangeable. So, you know, go light a fire in the shrine, in the fire shrine, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other places. Well, I mean, but you know what I mean. Like you know, St. Charles Place could be St. Charles Shrine for all we know. You know, but I like that because like the dust of the earth, everything's a place. You know, and so everything can be a shrine. But that's essentially, you know, probably what it was. Is that you know, folks could go up and down the ziggurat, you know, and there was a feeling, you know, I mean, they were, you know, kind of really learning how to build things with rocks and stuff that, you know, we're the only thing on this planet that builds, and so maybe we're supposed to build, and God's up, and that's what we do, right, is we build higher. There's also caution about the Tower of Babel in the Bible, too, to kind of, you know, say, no, that doesn't actually work, but with Jacob's feeling here, I think that he feels like this is a very, very special place, you know. There was already a shrine of some sort there, and he, you know, was I find it a little disrespectful that he just grabs a stone out of it, uses it as a pillow, and so maybe he learned something that night. You know what I mean? Let's see here, and so he where am I? Let's see here.
We just finished it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look. It says, resource sheet 2, the account of Jacob's returning to the site of his dream. Well, I'll see that in here. We may not have the whole thing. It may be like a whole nother page I forgot to make a copy of. But all this is, let's do the now what, because this is where we're headed in this anyway. So the now what, that last one there.
The place?
No. The now what? Yeah, that one. The place.
The place. Readers and hearers of this text will notice that the word place is used repeatedly, 6 times, to the point of awkward redundancy. We cannot ignore the intended emphasis. God is in this place. God is everywhere, of course. But we mark the spots where we know it in powerful and convincing ways. Ancient and contemporary consciousness share common ground in acknowledging the power of the place to locate the meaning and evoke memory. We hear this text in specific physical place, most likely a space designed for worship. Whatever it is, its name, it is a Bethel, a house of God, where despite our insistence that God is not beholden to our designated places, we gather in the hopeful conviction that God will meet us there.
So Evie kind of talked about this before, but you know, in essence, we've built, you know, a shrine. Same way, you know. I think, you know, this property, we know the history of this place, but this property was purchased by the Huntingtons, you know, so that they could lean on the diocese to move all the people living over there at Brook Green over here so that they could have a sculpture garden, you know. But this provided African Americans with a common place, you know, to come to celebrate and all that, and it became a very important place to them, and to us, and to everyone in the community, I think. And so, you know, so this does mark, you know, a place where people have felt, you know, God's presence, you know, and all that. How do we do that in the quarantine? We're essentially not allowed to do those shrine visits and things like that as in the ways that we have before in the past.
We do it through electronic.
We do digital stuff. Yeah, for sure. I think y'all are both on vestry, so you know that you can go over to church and be in there anytime. And if you've not done that, I know you have. I think, have you been over? Oh, you've been over there, Penny, haven't you? Setting up moving the chairs around at least or anything? Go over there. Yeah, it's good for the soul.
Yes,
It hurts a little, but it's a good hurt, you know. You know, I think that's the thing, is that it's a place of meaning, but also of memory, you know, for folks here. You know, the things that we experience in the community that we have, that place is always attached to those meanings. Jack's funeral, Carney's funeral. You know, I mean, let's look at, you know, it's not just funerals, but you know, I mean, those kinds of things. I think of the former students of Miss Ruby coming here to honor her, essentially building a ziggurat, if you will, modern day kind of thing, you know.
In the garden.
And if you don't think that I see angels going up and down that story, you know, you know, that's the thing. So you know, it's a, you know, that sanctuary, you know, is nice. You know, I don't know if you've ever traveled to Hawaii, but on the Big Island, there's this place, I don't remember what it's called in Hawaiian, but it's got a lot of vowels in it, but it's the place of refuge where you could go and, you know, whatever, and no one would harm you there, you know. And those are important places. You know, we call those sanctuary because we feel safe.
Right.
Shrines are a little different, though. You may not feel safe when you're encountering God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's a little different. You know, there's a, and so, you know, I always think of, you know, my friends, in looking at their lives. It's easier to do that than look at my own sometimes. But how we have places that are shrines and places that are sanctuaries, and God's in both. But one is, we use them differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think the challenge for me, and I think for all of us in leadership here, is to make that, digitally or physically, both a sanctuary and a shrine. You know what I mean? You are safe here. God will protect you here. This is also a shrine. God will challenge you here as well.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting kind of thing. Let's see here. How does it feel to learn leaders in the Bible were con men and swindlers and all that sort of stuff? What does that do? Is that encouraging? Is it disappointing? I mean, how do you?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's disappointing on one level, but it's basically nice to know that it doesn't require absolutely perfect people to accomplish good things.
That is reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah. And, God moves in mysterious ways and finds ways to take people who, to the, obvious, on the surface don't look like they would be good leaders. I mean, just reading Jacob, I kept having the feeling that he kept being twisted by other people. I mean,
Yeah.
it was sort of hard to know who was the real Jacob, because he was always doing what his mother wanted or what his uncle wanted or what somebody else wanted.
Right.
And it didn't seem to have much of a backbone, and yet he turned out.
Oh, that's an interesting point, Penny, because you've got a place where essentially people he's getting jerked around, could be. Laban doesn't get a lot of respect there either. But that place in the middle, where this shrine is, that's a different place than those other places.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that's it. That's fascinating. So it is a little sanctuary from these two extremes, or these two camps. But it's also a place to make sense of the two as well.
And he recognized it as being this is the house of God.
Oh yeah. I mean, how many times have I said? Let's see, where is it? Surely the Lord is in this place, and I didn't even know it. I felt that. I felt that here on campus too. I remember the first time I was in the big church and felt, chapel's no problem. God just hangs out in there all the time, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
But in the church, I was like, but I do remember the first time I felt that. I went, oh yeah, you've totally been here the whole time. Just, too grouchy to notice. But I think, I tell you what, we're going to do two things before we leave, and I think this will be fine. And I'm sorry if it feels a little shorter. It's just less people to talk.
Right.
How about a guided meditation? You can close your eyes or not. Depends if you want to fall asleep or not. But this is an activity. It's called Embracing the Promise. And, you can write these things down. I'm just going to say them slow. And as the answers come, just hear. That's all. Let's not make this more of a thing. I experience I am with you, God's presence, through this. I experience, quote, I will keep you, or God's protection, through this. I experience, quote, I will bring you back, or God's ability to transform persons and situations through this. I experience, quote, I will not leave you, or God's constant help through this. And I experience, quote, I have promised it to you, or God's unfailing word and promise through this. And all I did there was take A, B, C, D, and E from the first one. And, so that's, I did that last night. Really enjoy, you know what I mean? Just kind of going through those things,
Yeah.
All right. This is a hymn. And it's to Dundee. So if I start singing it, I'm sorry. I didn't. I was good last time. But this is by Philip Doddridge, and it was written in the 18th century, 1700s in England. You know, classic English hymn. But I think it has something to do with what's going on with this reading and that kind of, and where we are today. O God of Bethel, by whose hand thy people still are fed, who through this earthly pilgrimage hast all thine Israel led. Our vows, our prayers we now present before thy throne of grace. O God of Israel, be the God of this succeeding race. Through each perplexing path of life, our wandering footsteps guide. Give us each day our daily bread and raiment to provide. O spread thy sheltering wings around till all our wanderings cease, and at our Father's loved abode our souls arrive at peace. Such blessings from thy gracious hand our humble prayers implore, and thou shalt be our covenant God and portion evermore. You know, simple English poetry. But I love the way that talks about the wanderings and the movings of Jacob. It just really kind of captures this little story, you know. So.
I don't know, kind of just. I mean, you think of these leaders.
Yeah.
Up here.
I know.
And just, you know, instead of climbing Jacob's ladder.
Well, I'll tell you. We talked about this a little bit last week. I've got the thing already thrown out. There it is. So, I'll try to do it like this. I don't know the validity of this stuff, okay? I'm just making this up as I go, but it seems to work, okay? I have had opportunities to minister to people when they feel that they are in close proximity to power, meaning that they feel that they have some say in what's going on, whether in their life or in the larger life of the community. And I've also had the opportunity to minister to people that have a very far distance to power, or perceived at least, and they have no say in what's going on. They're just going to get blown around by the wind, right? What I have found is that those that feel close, so power's up here, this is a close perceived, close distance to power. This is far. So you've got most people feeling away from the power here, and you've got a big part of the population, Whether or not this is true doesn't matter. It's all about perception, okay? And what I have found is that people here want to see me in the liquor store. They want to see me have a little too much, on the boat, that kind of stuff. And why? Maintains that close proximity to power, doesn't it? You know what I mean? He's just like us. That means we're in power too, People over here want the Father will that comes out on the balustrade and waves to the crowd and gets a sign across and goes back in. They need to know that the powerful is doing okay, and that they can do their role as unpowerful, but that the powerful people are looking powerful, and that's what they need. You know what I mean? And so we kind of go back and forth between these two in our own lives, okay, with everything. But it is very frustrating, to want. I will say that, let's just be honest. If there's a Republican in the office as president, Democrats feel more over here. For the most, a lot of times. If you're in this, what do you want? The perfect president, right? And so that's the rub, isn't it? It's tough, because that doesn't exist. Not in the office of president. That's why I tell the firefighters, I'm like, guys, look, I need to give you agency over your spirituality, okay? You're going to be in places where you need to know that you need to stop and pray. And there's nobody going to be there to tell you to do that, okay? So you got to know. So I need them to have some power over their spiritual lives, and so I carry the hose, and I get sweaty, and I've, ripped arm off my shirt at a fire last week, and that kind of stuff. But I also tell them, you have got to have a pastor in addition to your chaplain. You gotta have the one that is perfect. I'm not, and y'all know it, you know. But they need to have somebody that makes them want to be better. You know what I mean? And so it's sometimes table. Now the other part about this is, if you're in this camp, I'm going to talk to you about the crucifixion, about Jesus dying for us, dying on a cross in pain, the Son of God for us, and what that means to us. If you're over here, you don't need to hear that. You're already there. You get the empty tomb and the power of God to make it right in the end. You know what I mean? Sooner or later, you're going to come back over here, and then I'm going to talk about the cross again. And then you're going to be at the tomb again. I've just noticed that that's what pulls me forward in life, you know, from my pastors and that kind of stuff, you know. And so I often, you know, so you know, everywhere you are with credit, you know, with the banks and you know, computers and all that kind of stuff, the tombs will be empty next morning, and it's going to be fine. You know what I mean? It's going to be fine. You know. Let me think. Well, Brian Monroe, I know that is busy right now and all that kind of stuff, but do not forget the people that you're leaving up on crosses. You got to take care of the little ones right now. You know what I mean? Don't let them die agonizing deaths as well. You see what I mean? You know, it's that binding and loosening. Isaac and Abraham shows up in the story, right? You know, Abraham, you know, is bound by God to stab his son to death, and then he is loosened by God to sacrifice, you know, the ram instead. And that's what we do. We do it with our kids, right? You know, we do, you know, and we need it in our own lives. You know, Susie, you know, is hard on me some days, pretty patient other days, and you know, I respect that. It's a dance. We're all in this together. So, but that tomb will be empty. Oh yeah, you know what I mean? And the thing is, sometimes that has to happen at night when you're asleep.
Yeah.
But it will be. It always is. It always is. So, well, thanks. Nice to see y'all. See y'all tonight at vestry, right? Or more or less.